Hello everyone, and what we're going to be doing today is we're going to take a look at how I'd like everyone to create their first assignment. Now, what is going to happen is I'm going to make this file available. I'm going to actually give you the naming convention here. It's going to be named art 2650 underscore A9. That's the actual name of the assignment. Underscore last name. Everyone is basically going to take this file and just put your own last name on there. So I'm going to save this and I'm going to upload this to Blackboard. And I want to discuss this scene a little bit so you have an idea of what you're getting into. Okay, so I took the liberty already of changing this to 30 frames a second. And one thing I'm going to fix up, in fact I'm actually going to fix it up now, is I made sure that the playback start and end was basically 1 to, I'm going to put this to 120, so I'm going to resave this obviously. And the start and end animation, that as long as it's over 120 you're fine, so 1 to 250 is fine in that case. And the playback speed is going to be similar to something more real-time. So to make that work, you would hit save, although in my case I'm going to just go to settings just to show you the last part. I did change this to feet already. Nothing else really needs to be changed, and I'm hitting save at this time. Okay, and I'm going to save up here as well so that when you have an opportunity to test this out yourself, you will be able to. Okay, so first thing that a person always wants to do is set up their scene. Now, one other thing I want to discuss is the way that you're going to be changing this ball around is going to be in 3 parts. You're going to have a moment to change the movement, the scale, and the rotation, but they're not all going to be in the same area. Check it out. If I select the circle, because just a bit of a heads up, if you're going to be working with certain kinds of animation, it's most likely you're not going to actually move the object itself, but you're going to actually have controllers to work from. So in this case, if I select the little circle that's over here, that's going to select the actual ball itself. And just as a safety precaution, I want to actually change the elements for the translate X, Y, and Z, the scale X, Y, and Z, but I don't want to rotate this. Mostly because if I try and rotate it, it's going to rotate this on the bottom. That won't work out so great. Likewise, with the sphere, I don't want to move this. I don't want to scale this, at least directly, but I do want to rotate this. So if I was to select this and rotate like so, that's going to rotate in a more realistic way. Yeah, so basically just select over here. And yeah, I'll be rotating on the X. Now, what I want to do at this time is I want to show you how to lock elements up here, similar to what I did. And I'm going to give you opportunities to try this out. So since we're all going to be on the same page anyways, I can use mine as an example. Just making sure I save before I do this, as safety precaution. Okay, so I don't want to actually rotate the Y and Z. I just want to rotate the X. To actually lock up these areas, you can right-click and just choose Lock Selected, and bam, you will have this area locked, so you won't rotate anything or do anything besides, of course, rotate the X. That's a good thing in this case. Now I'm going to do the same thing for the move, although you go to the translate and lock them all up. And I recommend you do the same so you have a chance to kind of experience this a little bit. So I'm going to lock these all up. And the way I'm doing that is right-click and just lock selected. But as I said before, we are going to be actually moving on the translate Z. That's basically going forward and back like this. So to unlock something, right-click and unlock. Now, as I said before, a little bit later down the line, I'll be showing everyone how to make their own controllers for simple stuff, of course, so that you can try this out yourself. So now that I unlock that, if I select this over here, select move, no problems. Of course, if I try and go in any other direction, big problems, but that's not my style today. Just go from left to right in this case. So, okay, my animation's ready to begin. I made sure that my time slider's at 1, and I'm ready to give this a try. So first thing I'm going to do is go with frame 1, make sure it's at the corner over here, hit S for set key, And then what I usually like to do is I usually like to kind of plan out where I'm going to be making my keys. So this is going to be my first frame, and I'm going to go to the end like so. Oh, actually before that, I need to move my time slider first. And this is what happens. If I was to move this and then try to move my time slider, it'll move my object back to its last key. Now this is a little safety precaution to make sure that, well, you don't do stuff like this. But now that I move my time slider I should say, I can move this to the end and then hit S. So I have a very good idea of where my start area is and where my stop area is. Not bad. Now every 30 frames I want this to kind of have a bounce to it. Now the way that this is going to work is I can go to frame 30, and yeah, if I do want this to bounce between every 30 frames, I could move this. Oh, actually, I do have to turn off the translates Y over here, so I'm going to unlock that. There we go. Now I could basically hit the set key over here and then go back to 30 and then bring that down again, but that's a lot of extra work we don't need to do, because check this out. If I plan out my keys and exactly what I want to do, I could add a bracing key here. I could go to frame 60, because again, I'm going to be bouncing every 30 frames. So frame 60, hit S, frame 90, hit S. So like all these different frames, I'm going to be adding my key. Definitely don't forget that first one. And again, but this actually gives us a good opportunity. If you see an area has some keyframes in here, but you see an area that's a little bit more of a lighter pink, that basically means that a key hasn't been put on there if you move your time slider there. So now is a good enough time as any. Now I'm going to go to frame 15, and I'm just going to move this up like so, and hit S. And you're going to see a little bit of a bounce there. Now I'm going to go to frame 45, because again, that's the halfway point. And I'm going to try my best to bring this up halfway compared to last time. I'm going to go down, going to go to frame 75, bring this up halfway between those two areas, hit S, and then go to frame 105 and bring this up. It seems a little strange, but check this out. If you go in that order the way that I recommended, you got yourself a little bit of a ball bounce, and that's a really awesome thing. So just going to repeat everything that I've just done so you can kind of see that. So I could explain what I've done. Okay, so first thing I did was basically I mapped out how long the animation is going to be in this case. In this case, it's going to be 120 frames or 4 seconds. And once that was done, I basically made sure I added keys not just at the beginning and the end, but I also went to frame 30, 60, and 90 to make sure that I added my start and stop points in these areas. This way, when I make my bounces, I don't need to put it back to the floor again, because it's going to go back to this kind of default point, as you can see here. Awesome. So I'm going to go to frame 15, because I want the bounce to be between 1 and 30 in this case. Going to be at the highest amount, working with some physics. And hit S. I'm going to go forward to frame 45. Again, just going to move this up about the halfway point here. It's not 100% accurate. That's not the end of the world. But do your best to try. But we'll be able to get better accuracy in a moment. There we are. Then I hit play. Looks like this one went a little bit too high over here, but that's okay. Just going to move this down. But this is one of the reasons why you don't want to have to do this again and again, because moving this back down here is a pain. And I'm going to hit S. So I think that should do it. 1, 2, 3. Not bad. Okay, so the first part of my ball bounce is pretty much done. Now the other thing I'd like to do, and this is one of the reasons why I left the scale over here, is I want to add a little technique called squash and stretch to help this. Now most of the time I'm not a big fan of scaling, particularly the squash and stretch that we're going to be doing, but I think it could add a little bit more to our animation, so we are going to be doing that. There we are. And I'm going to hit the R for rotate. I'm going to bring this down. Then I'm going to bring these sides out and out. This is going to add a little bit of nice extra velocity to what we're doing. And that should hopefully look pretty nice. The hard part is making sure that you're keeping it pretty consistent. But again, a little bit of exaggeration isn't the end of the world. There we are. And hit S. So now when he actually jumps, it has a bit of an extra oomph to it. Now again, we're just doing a little bit of exaggeration, so it doesn't have to be 100% accurate. But once it hits the ground, the first time it's gonna go out relatively the same amount. The Y is gonna go halfway, or 0.5. And the other areas are gonna go to 1.5 or so. There we go. And hit S. Now frame 60. This one isn't going to go down nearly as much. Because again, a little bit of velocity. And the last one doesn't even need to go down at all. Because by that point, the velocity is not really there as much anymore. So let's take a look. Bang, boing, boing. And that's basically what we want to try to get at this. So it's just a lot of scaling. And again, I did this on the green circle, but that's why I made sure that I blocked out what's unnecessary. In fact, if I even tried to select the actual ball itself, that's this one over here, you'll see that scaling is an impossibility. And in this case, it's kind of a good thing. So good stuff. Okay, so we basically did all the work that we need to do for this. But if we're going to be doing an actual ball bounce, wouldn't you think it would be rolling a little bit? Well, that's one of the other reasons why we have this controller, because again, the movement is taken care of by that little circle. Now, the actual sphere itself, that's where we're going to do our rotations. Because again, if we tried to rotate on the circle, it'll rotate at the bottom area over here. But if I select the circle now and go to rotate, that'll rotate directly in the center. It's a weird little trick, but it does create some very interesting looks to this. So I'm going to go to frame 0 over here. Once again, I'm going to hit S for set key. And I'm not going to go to every 30 frames. I'm just going to go to the very end. And I'm going to be doing some tests. I'm going to basically see how, let's see, over here. Just put this to maybe about 900, or negative 900 in this case. But the reason why I'm doing it this way is now I don't have to keep on putting that interval multiple times. Just the one time, I should be done and done. But don't take my word for it. Check it out yourself. Now again, this is one of those kind of weird things that controllers can do. If you ever need to add a little bit of a squash and stretch to something, but it needs to be done in a very specific way, controllers can help you with this. And as you can see over here, we do have a very exaggerated ball bounce like this. And hopefully it should be aesthetically pleasing. Okay. Now, the only last thing that we have to do here is basically have to fix up our bounce, because right now, as you can see, it looks good in some ways, but in other ways, it's kind of a little bit too floaty, especially when it hits the bottom. So we want to change that. So just one of the last things that we want to do here is we're going to go to the Windows Animation Editor's Graph Editor, and we can basically fix up our animation. So if I go to the little circle over here and basically select all the different parts, I can clean up my animation. So what I'll do over here, just to get started, is I can basically make it so that when it hits the ground, it will basically have a little bit of a instant change to it. So right now, basically, again, it's a little floaty because this is a little bit arced. But if I use that linear option, basically this little option over here, it basically straightens those areas. I'm going to do the same thing for the other sections. Just basically straighten them out. And only the bottom areas in these cases. I'm also going to straighten out the areas at the bottom area over here so that once the ball actually hits the ground, and that's basically what this graph represents, because this is the translate y, it should bounce immediately. And that's basically we'll want to change it. But don't take my word for it. Take a look yourself. So it's a little bit of a change, but it is there. And this is one of the reasons why it takes so long to do certain animations for 3D. Because again, if you're trying to get pinpoint accuracy and all this other kind of stuff, it does take some time. But with a little bit of elbow grease, this stuff can look actually quite nice. Now, one last thing I want to do for the transforms. You don't necessarily always need every single key here. In this case, the keys going from point A to point B are a little unnecessary, so I'm just going to select these themselves and delete them. Then I can basically click the two ends like so and use the linear option to make the motion a little bit more robotic. I hate using the term robotic, but at least it'll start and stop in a more accurate way, at least for what we're doing. So that's looking nice. Now the rotation over here is going to be similar. I don't want this to slow start, then speed up, then slow down for the stop. I want this to be consistent, as if it basically is the middle part of a longer animation. So I'm going to do the linear over here to make this a perfectly straight line. That looks pretty nice. I'm happy with this. And that's pretty much your homework. If you want to basically get an idea of what the homework is, it's pretty much what I just showed here. Just do your best to give that a try. If you really want to challenge yourself, give this a shot. Let's see here. Now, if you were to go to Google, I'm going to type in YouTube. Try this. Yeah, I got some weird stuff for this kind of stuff over here. Do a search for examples for ball bounce. Yeah. Or better yet, ball bounce reference. Yeah, here we go. Now, the reason why I'm saying go to ball bounce reference is you'll actually be able to see some people making references for ball bounces. Now, the reason why that's kind of useful is because you can actually take a look at how a ball will actually bounce up and down like so. And it should look pretty interesting. Now, this is very similar to anyone who may have done any kind of ball bouncing in the past for 2D animation. This should actually look very familiar because you'll see the arcs and how they basically go on over here. And the eventual goal that an animator wants to do is they want to try and make the illusion of life. I know it sounds a little cliche, but it is pretty true. But that's basically what you want to approach. So that's pretty much it, at least in this case. So give that a try if you can. If you're able to get basically what you see over here, you're in good shape. But if you want to really take it up a notch, do a little bit of research and it will make your animation look much better. So that's pretty much the long and short of what I wanted to show. Hopefully you found this part educational. Again, I'm Professor Stefan, and hopefully you enjoyed this. So I'll see you guys on the next one.